I want to talk about Apple switching to USB-C. Apple switched to USB-C. On the iPhone 15, it's at USB...
I was kind of hoping that was going to be the whole topic.
Yeah, it's USB 2.0 speeds, whereas on the iPhone 15 Pro, it does USB 3 at speeds of up to 10 gigabit per second. And I saw a lot of people upset about it, but we were about halfway through script review when I looked at Plouffe, who was the writer for our video, and I was like, this is not them just hamstringing the 15. This is probably because the 15 uses the A16 Bionic. It probably legitimately doesn't have a USB 3 controller. And so we looked and we were like, okay, well, what other devices have used the A16 Bionic? Because if an iPad did, for example, then if that iPad supported USB 3, well, then it was definitely on the silicon. But they never used it in an iPad. Mm-hmm. It was an iPhone-only SoC. So I think it's been confirmed at this point, but I was really glad that we didn't lay into Apple about it, because obviously if it's not on the hardware, it's not going to be in there. So we will likely see an iPhone 16 if it's based on A17 silicon. Could they just align that numbering, please? Just skip one for one or something. Anyway, we would likely see an iPhone 16 with the A17 be equipped with USB 3 as sort of just a generational upgrade over the iPhone 15, which has a 16 silicon in it. So you get USB Type-C. I believe it's up to 20 watts of charging. You get USB 2 speeds on the iPhone 15, USB 3 speeds on the iPhone 15 Pro, and obviously the Pro Max or Ultra or whatever the heck they're calling everything these days. And I think that's pretty much everything to say about the Apple event. They also have a new watch or two, and yeah, you guys can watch the video summary that we did the other day. But this was also, even though Apple will not admit it as part of, their innovation announcement launch event or whatever else, this is also due to pressure from the EU.
Oh, absolutely.
To standardize the cables and wall warts and all of the bits and pieces that we need for device charging, that Apple has apparently decided to comply with, rather than go, full take my ball and go home and just moved everything wireless has been speculated over the last few years. I have seen a lot of arguments, not all of which I can defeat, both ways for this. On the one hand, the EU's action here towards platform interoperability, and in the case of Apple, reducing waste. And okay, I'd like to stop everyone who is saying, well, what about all the lightning cables that are going to be wasted now? All of those lightning cables were going to be wasted.
Yeah.
The difference is now we aren't going to keep manufacturing any more of them. That's the point. Eventually, lightning was going to go away. Apple's been moving away from lightning for 6 years. It's just a matter of how many more of these bloody things we keep making that will eventually be thrown away. In fact, every USB-C cable is probably going to be thrown away at some point. But at least by standardizing it, we can produce fewer of them so that we don't need to have more than one cable for our iPad and for our iPhone, and then another one for our iPad and our iPhone in our carry a bag that we take to and from work, et cetera, et cetera. It's a reduction move. It's not that suddenly, all those lightning cables are garbage and that's, we've done a bad thing by switching over to USB-C. We will stop producing lightning cables at some point in the near future, and that is a good thing. That's the whole point of it. So with that said, I have seen arguments that the EU's move might not necessarily be, even if it's a good move this time, it might set a really bad precedent. Because let's talk about Lightning for a second. People like to dunk on it today, but Lightning was huge when it came out.
I actually really liked Lightning.
Major advantage iPhone when Lightning was first introduced compared to USB Micro B,
It was
which was
massive.
a piece of crap. And you can quote the rated insertions all day. I don't care. I do not believe you. My anecdotal experience with USB Micro B has been extensive enough and negative enough that you will never sell me that Micro B was anything other than a failed standard. It was a bad connector. Fragile, finicky, terrible. Also, the space advantage over Mini B, negligible. If every phone had just used Mini B until we got Type-C, I would have been way happier with that. And Mini B was a piece of crap.
I even have some weird hot takes about Lightning as a non-Apple user. That I actually just like the connector more.
Yeah.
I find it plugs in
feels
better.
good.
I'm not even talking compared to Micro B. I'm talking compared to C.
Sure.
I find it plugs in significantly better.
Yep. It has a really clear tactile,
Yes.
I am inserted right now feel.
I think it's slightly smaller. Is that accurate?
Then Type-C?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's marginally smaller.
Yeah, so it's a little bit
Remember,
smaller.
you got to account for the housing on the other side and, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so it's hard to,
It's
really know.
Marginally smaller.
But I think it's slightly smaller, and the plug-in feels, wildly better. I've always, kind of wished that the actual standard was the Lightning cable.
The problem is that Lightning is too small to have enough conductors for modern functionality.
I'm just talking from a, tactile side. Yeah.
And that's a big part of why Lightning has lost its luster, because while it does have actually more conductors than USB 2, I forget what Apple uses them for. I think it's auxiliary data transfer. That's how they're able to do HDMI over Lightning and stuff like that. It is at significantly lower bandwidth than a real HDMI connection, but it does allow them to do additional things that you wouldn't be able to do with straight up USB 2.
Yes, chat. I know they're bums about the licensing. I'm also even looking right now at a USB-C to Lightning adapter that is
Nice.
$40. I'm just talking about the tactile experience of using the cable. I actually very much like Lightning. That's all I'm saying.
Sue for AWS says too few conductors isn't a hard problem to solve. It sure is.
Actually, yeah, what?
It dramatically increases the complexity of the ICs at either end to have fewer conductors. They have to operate at it. You either have to increase the speed of the cars on the road, or you have to increase the number of lanes. And so USB-C adds A, more speed, and B, a lot more lanes for data to travel along compared to a Lightning connector. With that said, why? Mystery Me says USB 3 was possible over Lightning. The iPad Pros that had Lightning supported USB 3 speeds over Lightning. Is that enough? Hold on a second. Because USB 3 was 9 conductors when we got it. Lightning is only 7. So that would have been... Every one of my Lightning cables has burned pins, says Reckoning. Okay, that's something I haven't personally experienced, although I have used it a fair bit. But we do have people talking in the chat about some design flaws in Lightning. Oh, Lightning is 8. Okay, I did not know that. I thought Lightning was 7. Okay. Either way, for whatever reason, whether it was cost on the device side, whether it was cost of the implementation on the client side, Apple did not broadly roll out higher data speeds over Lightning. USB-C is clearly the path forward and is so much more capable, so much more standardized, and generally the right decision. Why don't we just leave it at that and then go into the next thing that I want to discuss, which is arguably they got it right this time, but given... in general, governing bodies...
It has the potential to stifle innovation.
Understanding of tech, generally.
It also has a potential to cause things like USB Forum to fall into complacency.
What are the odds they're going to get it right every time?
Yeah.
That's my bigger question. Because, yeah, those are totally valid concerns. Now are we stuck with USB-C forever? Forever's a long freaking time.
Yeah.
And you're right. Yeah, we can make the cars drive faster, and we do have a lot more flexibility in the USB-C standard than we do in something like Lightning. There's a lot more conductors. But Is it going to be perfect forever? I mean, no, I can already see things about it that aren't perfect. Like you said, the tactile feel of the insertion is not as good. There's tiny, tiny little pins, tiny, tiny little contacts on both sides. It can be a little bit fragile. It can also be not fragile. We did that video ages ago, back when James started. One of his first jobs was to unplug and plug in an external drive, literally thousands of times until we managed to wear out every connector but the Type-C or something like that. I think we went to the rated number of insertions. It was literally thousands of times. Angle of insertion is not as wide, says Fioringo. Yeah, exactly. There are definitely problems with Type-C. So are we stuck with it forever now? And should we be allowing these governing bodies to make these decisions? Was there ever a referendum on this? Is this actually democratic?
I have no idea. I can't speak to that at all. I have no clue.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not democratic.
Okay.
So, man, I am torn, man. What happens when lobbyists get involved and then they just, pass down edicts that are advantageous to, I don't know, Microsoft over Apple? What recourse is there? I love the decisions that were made in this case, because I'm gonna be. My understanding is that this chat thing is gonna apply to iMessage as well, so we could end up seeing RCS supported, at least in Europe. And if the Type-C connector is anything to go by, if they support it in Europe to avoid peeving off their American and Asian customers and Australian, I remember you guys,
and also to not just like Antarctica, everything,
all the continents. Okay, in order to not peeve off the rest of their customers, I would hope that we would see RCS intercompatibility implemented everywhere else. In general, I really agree with the things that they're doing. I just worry that, you can start out with good intentions and end up doing the wrong things really, really easily. I don't have a solution to this.
No.
But I'm really glad that iPhones are Type-C now.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I guess, there's not really... Dan, do you have any thoughts on this? Or are you just busy typing responses to people?
I don't know, honestly. I do think it's interesting how, one governing body by themselves for the protection of their own consumers and constituents makes one decision, and then all the companies are required to jump on it because it's cheaper to make one SKU than two SKUs.
That doesn't mean they're required to.
No. Because they're required by the hand of capitalism, if you want to think about it that way.
Product development has gotten so expensive.
No, I agree, but it's just...
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, the clarification
is
important
there that it's not required.
Sure.